Let's be honest, many of the stories we write from our genealogy research can feel dry, with just a list of dates and facts. Adding historical context, or I like to call it setting the scene, is the easiest way to turn those boring details into engaging stories your family will want to read. Let me show you how simple it is by using the story of my ancestor, Elmyra Howard, a female doctor in Cincinnati in the late 1800s. The process I'm going to share can work for any story you're writing.
Howdy, welcome to the Write Your Family History channel. My name is Devin Noel Lee, a published family history author who wants you to learn how to quickly write non-boring family histories to share your legacy with your loved ones. You don't have to be a trained author to write a family history, so join me as I teach you how to turn names, dates, and places into enjoyable narratives.
As you incorporate historical context, you actively place your family's stories within a broader societal context. But you must be careful not to interject your bias or presentism into the stories. And be sure to check out my video about presentism so you know how to avoid it by looking for the link to the video in the description box, or it will be the suggested video at the end of this one. So stay tuned through to the end. Step 1 is to pick one event or document in your ancestor's life. In this case, I have a newspaper article from 1878 about Dr. Elmyra's medical practice in Cincinnati. It reads, "The practice of Dr. Elmyra Howard, 459 West 6th Street, is one of the most extensive and successful in Cincinnati." I have much more to say about the discovery of Elmyra's being a doctor in the 1870s and 80s, but that's for a video over on the Family History Fanatics YouTube channel. And of course, the link to the video will be in the description box. For now, this genealogy gem is a lovely little nugget that needs more depth. That comes from a little historical context. When I think about historical context and how I can make use of this feature to expand my family histories, I like to think about 3 different categories. Greater family structure. How does your ancestor fit into the larger family structure or picture? Location context. What was the place like when your ancestor lived there? And social context. What was the cultural norms, major events, or social causes at the time of your ancestor's life? Not every story that you write warrants all of these categories. For Elmyra's story, I'm going to focus on location. When researching the location where your ancestor lived, here are some subtopics that you could research. Geography, amenities. What did the town have that would draw people there or make life a lot more comfortable? Culture, distance from that location to other things around where your ancestor lived, either the geography and the geographical features or when they have to travel. What was the economy like, the political climate, and population? The subcategory that I'll focus on in this video deals with population. It's amazing how quickly you can add the element of setting to your story by talking about the size of their village or the city your ancestor lived. When I'm looking for quick population information, I do a Google search. And while you can possibly have an AI tool tell you about the population of Cincinnati, Ohio in the 1880s, best practices suggest not to use AI tools for something you can browse. Besides, there are AI tools within search engines now, so just use a browser for this information. Notice Google tells me that Cincinnati has a population of over 250,000 persons in 1880. That's a very helpful fact. We can update this sentence from the newspaper article to say, in 1878, Dr. Howard practiced at West 6th Street and it was one of the most extensive and successful in Cincinnati. Cincinnati had a population of about 250,000 persons. Ta-da! We've added historical context. But is this finished? I hope you said no. Numbers need context to be meaningful. We need some comparisons in order to understand that question. For example, if you say that today that you lived in a city about the size of 150,000 persons, I'm going to think about Cedar Rapids, Iowa. When we lived there, the population was about 160,000 persons. So I have a rough idea about what size of town that would be. If you said, I lived in a town with about 15,000 persons, then I'd actually be a little confused because the population of the town I currently live in is 15,000 persons, but we're all smushed together and it feels like a master plan community without being a master plan community. It's kind of hard to explain, but I understand what 15,000 persons could be in a compact little village or town. But then if I think about where some of my relatives live in rural Missouri, then I think, oh, okay, so if you're from a town of 15,000, is it spread out like this little corner in Missouri, or is it compact like where I live in New Mexico? So numbers need context in order for people to understand it. I found a cool webpage on Wikipedia that compares populations by state. This webpage will tell you the census population data by decade beginning in 1790. One thing I really like to call your attention to is this column about admitted. When was that state or territory admitted into the United States? Because if you look at New Mexico, you're going to see it has a population in 1850. And I thought, wait a minute, New Mexico wasn't a state until the 19-teens. And sure enough, 1912 is when that state was admitted as a state into the United States. So this might have been either the New Mexico territory days or the territory days that preceded when New Mexico was a territory. So be careful before you say, oh, it's something is larger than the state of New Mexico. Make sure state of New Mexico, it's after 1912. If not, then you need to go double check to figure out if it was part of a territory. The other cool thing about this website is it has the population for the enslaved persons that were in the United States. What I find interesting, being from Ohio, I always thought Ohio never had slaves, but in fact, in 1830 and 1840, they had a few. I wonder where they lived. Rhode Island started with almost 1,000 slaves, but by 1860, it had banned slavery from the state. So that's why you can see the numbers drop off. So it is a really good representation of the population in an area, but you can also see historical context. Did slavery grow? Did it decrease? So forth. We're focusing on 1878, which would be closer to 1880 than 1870. So let's go see what the population was for Ohio in 1880. Now, instead of just looking the list and coming down to Ohio and going across and seeing 1880 and having your answer, what I really like about this website is you can sort the numbers by largest to smallest and smallest to largest. So initially it does smallest to largest, and then you can do largest to smallest. And wow, Ohio was the third largest state in the United States in 1880. Now, I have this misperception, and there are so many memes about the state of Ohio and nothing good comes from the state of Ohio. I'm not saying that. The youth culture that is pervading in my house is telling me about all these memes of Ohio. I never really thought of Ohio being incredibly large, and lo and behold, it is the third largest state in the United States in 1880. So when you put that context back with, oh my gosh, Elmyra is working as a doctor in one of the largest states in the country in 1880. Notice you have now added some context simply by going and talking about population. As we go through this list, not only do we see that Cincinnati is part of Ohio, the third largest state in the United States, when we scroll down and consider about 250,000 persons, we're going to go start seeing the number of states. I can't really highlight it here, but beginning with Colorado and going down, these states had a smaller population than the city of Cincinnati in 1880. Another way to look at it is by clicking on this, creating a map and highlighting the states that have a smaller population than the city of Cincinnati in 1880. Now, I could use this image in my future project, or I could just kind of highlight those details. Next, I can do a browser search that asks what were the largest cities in 1880, and you can get some examples. Like I said, AI is built into the search engine, and if you click on these little links, it will often take you to a web page, and then you get this information. And notice Cincinnati is the 8th largest city in the country. It is the largest city in Ohio at that time as well. And now I can add even more information to the article about Elmyra. Not only is she a doctor and having this extensive and successful practice, but she's doing it in the 8th largest city in the United States, which for me is so amazing. Now that we've added a small detail about Elmyra, we can return to the list of possible subcategories for location to continue expanding our understanding of Cincinnati in 1878. Or we can return to the other two categories mentioned above and ask, how does Elmyra fit into the larger picture of her family, and what were the cultural norms? Again, she's a female doctor at this time. How does that play in? Is it normal? Is it abnormal? Lots of great questions we could then go and answer. Or you can use additional genealogical records to add more context and find clues for your next social history research question. For instance, I found an article that stated in 1884, Elmyra earned an annual income of $7,000. When I add $7,000 per year as her income to the paragraph, we can see how successful she is. But is that enough? I'm not going to answer that in this video. Instead, I'm going to ask you in the comments to tell me what you would research to make $7,000 become more meaningful for your readers. Yes, I'm a teacher and I just gave you homework. I hope through this small example, you'll see that in most cases, you're not looking to do a deep dive into history archives or a lengthy historical research project. You don't need to overwhelm your readers with too many details. Write just enough to make the story feel anchored in time. When we don't add historical context, we don't connect our family members to their ancestors. In the case of Elmyra, my family members could say unenthusiastically, whoop-de-doo, so some old lady named Elmyra was a doctor, yay! Or they could say, wait, Elmyra is a female doctor in the late 1880s, one of the largest cities in the United States. She made a huge income for that day and she was female. What did her husband have to say about that? Was she the only doctor in the area? Was she only female doctor? Oh my gosh, tell me more. This is exciting. Okay, so seriously, which reaction do you want from your family members? I know which one I would like. You tell me your thoughts in the comments. But I will leave you with this thought. When we pique curiosity, we turn the hearts of the children to the fathers, so to speak. And we can do this with ancestors that are not so amazing, like a bowling manager for Swan Lanes in Columbus, Ohio, or a female doctor in Cincinnati in 1878, like Elmyra. Again, when we add historical context to their story, maybe we have more understanding, if not compassion, for the lives they lived and the choices they made. Now it's your turn to try adding historical context to your ancestor stories. By small and simple things, great stories are written. It's easier than you think. However, if you are stuck with an ancestor and how to improve the setting of their story, I'm here to help. Leave a comment and describe your ancestor's story and your struggle to add the historical context. I'll share my suggestions and you might get some bonus tips from our amazing community members.
Remember to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe on your way out. Then go write your family history.